like app alerts undocumented immigrants of ICE raids. President Donald Trump's immigration policy has sparked the creation of a new application to alert people to immigration raids by U.S. authorities. The new mobile app, called Notifka, will allow undocumented immigrants or undocumented migrants to alert relatives, friends, and attorneys or themselves if they become victims of immigration raids or immigration of custom enforcement. Oh, I see. So again, the new mobile app called Notifa will allow undocumented migrants the ability to alert their relatives, friends, and attorneys if they become victims of immigration raids by immigration and customs enforcement. So what that is it's basically an app that will just let them know if you get. It lets their family know that they just were busted and they're going back to Mexico. App creator Andrea Reyna, who is director of digital strategies for pro-immigrant organizations United We Dream, told EFE that after Trump's executive order on immigration, he and others thought that it would be a good idea to provide the community with a tool of this kind. The app will be available for iOS and Android starting April 10th, and it will allow users to start a series of telephone contacts that will notify immediately if they are detained. Reyna explained, using Notifka, one can select several contacts at the same time with different personalized predetermined messages, thus sending different messages to, for instance, one's relative, one's attorney, the boss, or the children's school principal. All the messages will be sent simultaneously with the touch of a button and will be erased once they are opened. Using the technology similar to Snapchat, Reyna emphasized the need among undocumented families to emergency plans for being deported, especially if there are no children involved. This is really nice of this app company to help criminals like this, isn't it? Illegal criminals? Although the technology will not stop deportations, it will help families who become targets of the authorities to know when to execute their prearranged plan for such eventuality, if they even have one, said Reyna, whose parents are undocumented. Find them, deport them first. Thus, the issue is a personal one for him, having witnessed several deportations among his family members and friends. Yeah. More than 8,000 people have already registered, will be able to download Notifka free of charge in April, Reyna said. Okay, and this comes right on the heels of this. Let me find it. Yep. Sanctuary city leaders helping illegal immigrants should be punished. We know about this lady, but here's an update.
Seriously injured or killed. They could be gang members involved in transnational gangs.
All right, a lawmaker actually saying, I want to warn illegals in my community when ICE agents are going to be in town and around. Can you imagine the reaction of the legal community to that? Massachusetts Bristol County Sheriff Thomas Hudson joining us now. Sheriff, what'd you think of that?
I didn't hear what you said, Neil. I apologize.
This representative who had gone to great lengths to try to give a heads up to illegals in her district when ICE agents might be coming by. What'd you think of it?
I can't think of anything more irresponsible and more underhanded and undermining to law enforcement and to the people of that community than what this state representative did. She ought to be ashamed of herself. The state legislature ought to be looking at her for, at a minimum, ethics violations. And on top of that, I'm sure there'll be some review as to whether or not she may have compromised some investigation involving ICE.
All right. Well, we called Michelle DeVoy, this Democratic state lawmaker, in question, and we've not heard back. But the issue, again, gets back to what you're saying. It's one thing to be a sanctuary city. It's quite another to encourage illegal activity and to give a heads up to those who are here illegally when there's a legal crackdown on them.
Well, you're right, and here's the issue, the real important issue around this. She doesn't have any idea the people she's warning or what their backgrounds are. They could be gang members involved in transnational gangs, the sex trafficking that's going on, and our officers in both the federal, state, local level, we sometimes need the element of surprise to make sure that somebody's not building an arsenal waiting for us, or having some heads up where one of our officers is going to get seriously injured or killed. Never mind the other issue around the threat that these people would get away that we know may be potentially harmful to people in the community, but now we'll have cover for God knows how long and how many more people to victimize.
And then you would wonder about whether you would even be cooperating or working with, at least in a public sense, ICE agents, right, Sheriff? If you know there's a good possibility that word would get back to a representative like this one, who would then telegraph what you're about to do.
Right, and that's look, this representative and everybody in public life knows you take an oath to uphold the laws to protect the citizens of your community, not protect the illegals that are in your community. And in this case, we're targeting the criminally illegal aliens, and everybody knows it. So for her to do this, it's just unconscionable that she would have done this.
And there are no, we always see these talks of like Gestapo type ICE raids on communities, even in sanctuary cities or states. That never happens. It's when you have a good authority or good reason to believe that suspicious individuals are there, right?
Well, that's correct. And Neil, we're focusing on, President Trump is clearly focusing on the criminally illegal aliens, wants us focusing on them. And so these are people that we have information about, that we're looking for, that are a danger to our society. And this is exactly what you would hope every elected official would be working with and helping our federal, state, and local partners do.
Where is all of this going, though? I mean, when you're trying to do your job, I think it was the mayor in Somerville, Massachusetts, said that you're acting like a thug. How do you respond to that? Where do you go with that, Sheriff?
Well, where I go with it is, look, I don't ever believe that anybody that's enforcing the laws, and that might be why the mayor's confused. The thugs are the people we're looking for. The people that are enforcing the laws, like myself, and insisting that mayors or anyone else who decides to harbor or conceal someone they know to be illegal under federal law, it's a felony, punishable up to 5 years per alien. Those are the people that really are the problem, not those of us who took an oath and made a promise to the people that we would enforce our laws.
But isn't it weird, Sheriff, that you're the bad guy in this? I mean, I'm not characterizing it that way, but the way it's portrayed and the way certainly this representative said it and others and the Somerville mayor and others, you're the bad guy for doing your job or trying to crack down on this sort of thing.
Those are all sort of red herrings. Those are ways to deflect things away from the real issue, which is we are a country of laws. We must enforce those laws to guarantee the protections to our people, our citizens, and our legal residents who are here. So if a mayor wants to suggest that by my doing that, my fellow law enforcement officers insisting that we're not going to go back on our promise, we're not going to undermine our oath, that makes us thugs, well, you know what? I don't really much care how he labels it. What he needs to do is he needs to be very careful and look within himself and explain to people why he's thinking that he should be treated differently than the constituents that elected him when it comes to being held accountable to the standards of violating laws.
These representatives in any capacity are the ones breaking the law, though, aren't they?
Well, there's no question about it. If you're harboring or concealing people, who are you really representing? The people I believe, and most people in Massachusetts across this nation, elect people to represent their interests, because they are law-abiding people who are doing the right thing and want to be protected and have their families protected and their interests protected. And so who are these elected officials really representing, Neil? That's the question.
Yeah, it's wild. Sheriff Thomas Hodgson, Bristol County, Massachusetts. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Same here.
First story segment tonight, an unbelievable situation in Massachusetts. Apparently a state representative there, Michelle Dubois, posted a Facebook thing that warned undocumented immigrants in the area there might be an upcoming ICE raid. That has caused all kinds of controversy. And joining us from Washington, Thomas Hodgson, Sheriff of Bristol County, Massachusetts, where this took place. What exactly did Ms. Dubois do?
Well, Bill, what she did was she sent out an alert saying she had got tipped off that there was going to be an ICE raid on Wednesday in the city of Brockton, and basically said, stay in your house, don't go outside. If somebody knocks on your door and you don't know who they are, don't answer the door. She gave out all kinds of instructions of what to do to avoid the ICE agents if they were to come into that area.
Did they indeed raid Brockton? Was there a raid?
I'm not aware of a raid at this point, but the underlying issue here is that we have an elected official who's gone out of her way not to protect the citizens of her community, but to harbor people who are targeted and not only putting ICE agents at risk because we need the element of surprise. When we go to a place, if we're dealing with some heavy-duty transnational gangs involved in sex trafficking or the other things that are going on out there, we don't want to come up on some arsenal where they're prepared and seriously injure or kill any of our law enforcement people, never mind the crimes these people will get away with going down the road if she creates this.
Yeah, if she lets them get away. Now, in your experience, ICE is targeting criminals, not gardeners and house painters, right? And,
no question about it.
All right, so Ms. Dubois is basically going to say, oh, no, I'm looking out for the poor chambermaids who don't deserve to be scrutinized. That's what she's going to say. Now, you pointed to, I made reference to this in a previous segment, Title 8 U.S. Code 1324. Is Ms. Dubois in violation of the law, in your opinion, federal law, for doing what she did?
Well, if we could prove that she was able to assist somebody from getting away in the instance where ICE was targeting somebody and they could determine that this person as a result of that got away, I would say absolutely, but I'm not a lawyer, but I got to believe the law is clear.
You would say there could be a case made. Can there be a case made against sanctuary mayors in general who say, look, we're just not going to cooperate with federal law?
When they make an effort to consciously harbor or conceal someone, that's a felony under federal law, and they should be treated exactly the way their citizens or their constituents would be treated if they did the same thing when it comes to the consequences for that. So, yes.
Okay. Now, you live in a county south of Boston. You know Massachusetts is one of the most liberal states in the Union, yet you yourself are opposite the prevailing wisdom in the Bay State. Your county people support you?
I've just been elected to my fourth 6-year term. Bill, I'm a Republican in the biggest Democratic enclave in Massachusetts. But that proves a point, which is the people around this country, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, they want the laws enforced, and they want to know that their elected officials and their law enforcement people are upholding those laws.
So you're not getting any backlash or...
Oh, sure. Oh, sure I am.
Oh,
I get backlash, but you know what? I've been getting backlash all through my career, and I don't worry about it because I got elected by the people, not by these politicians.
That's what I mean, though, not the politicians or the press, the folks you obviously you speak for yourself 4 terms. Have you talked to Ms. Dubois? Have you interviewed her? Are you talking to her? Or?
No, she's had some things to say. I guess publicly I'm a hate monger, and I'm using her as a means to, the typical thing you'd hear to avoid accountability or responsibility for what she did.
All right, Sheriff. We appreciate it very much.
You got to be very careful when you're posting things like that, particularly if they're not accurate. I mean, you can't do that. I think that's something that, as an elected official, there's a proper protocol to fill. I mean, I think that when ICE comes into a city, they're not going to notify the local authorities per se. They don't have an obligation to. So I think by putting that out on Facebook, and I know the rep a little bit. I didn't serve with her. She got elected after I left the House, but you got to be careful because you add fear to the community, and there's a lot more fear. But the federal government, when and if they come in to a neighborhood, sometimes they'll work with the local authorities depending on the operation. Sometimes they won't. When there's a drug operation, when they're doing an arrest type of drug arrest, it's usually the federal authorities, it's the FBI, it's the Boston Police, it's the state police, it's the U.S. Attorney's Office. There's a coordinated effort, and I would never post that because you don't know what the circumstances around the raid. Let's say that happened in Boston. Let's just hypothetically a rep in Boston posted the same thing. I would probably call the rep and ask them to come in and sit with me to talk about the concern and the fear that could be put out there. Particularly, it seems like this was not accurate. It wasn't true information, and it can cause more harm than good. And I think that you have to be very careful with that. I mean, there's a lot of unknown around the immigration issue. It's not, when I say it's not my business, it's something that you have to be very careful of. These are very delicate, sensitive raids that happen. So you can't be broadcasting it. You shouldn't be broadcasting it on social media or on the radio or on TV or in the paper because you don't know what the impetus of it is. You don't know what the raid actually is.
This is a serious matter. The American people, by 80% margin, believe these sanctuary cities are wrong. It clearly makes their own cities less safe.
That was Attorney General Jeff Sessions on the O'Reilly Factor talking about the administration's crackdown on sanctuary cities. Meanwhile, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, State Representative Michelle Dubois says she has no regrets about trying to help sabotage the enforcement of federal immigration law. On Tuesday of this week, she posted rumors that ICE was going to conduct raids in Brockton, Mass, and urged illegals to go into hiding. her fellow Democrats aren't exactly racing to defend the rule of law. Jamie Eldridge is a Massachusetts state senator. He supports Representative Dubois' efforts and is himself trying to make Massachusetts a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants. Senator Eldridge joins us tonight. Senator, thanks for coming on.
Tucker, thanks for having me on.
So you'd like to see the state of Massachusetts vote to make the Commonwealth a sanctuary for people here illegally, which seems to me legitimate. You know, voting on things, making laws, great. If you're able to do that, how would you feel if a sheriff in Massachusetts encouraged people to ignore the law that you passed? Do you think he should be punished for doing that?
I don't know if they should be punished. I think when we're talking about Representative Dubois, look, she was looking out for the best interests of her entire community. We know that these ICE raids have been incredibly destabilized to communities. They actually cause immigrants, whether legal or undocumented, to have less trust in calling the police about a crime. So she was really looking out for the best interests of all of her constituents, including the immigrants.
That is the biggest load of crap I ever heard in my life, and I hope Tucker rips this guy open from the inside out.
Districts. And, you know, that's why we filed the Safe Communities Act to limit police interaction with ICE raids.
Right. I get all that. I've heard all that a lot. There's no social science to suggest that any of this makes this community safer, but whatever. The point is...
No, there is. There's studies that say that sanctuary cities are safer. There is.
They are safer, but not because they're sanctuary cities. There's no proof of that. But here's the point. Is it a little weird for lawmakers to be encouraging people to ignore the law?
Well, look, we all have different approaches as legislators. You know, in the district I represent, when we've heard rumors about ICE raids, what I've done is reached out to the police so they can reach out and check with ICE agents to see if this is happening. Because, you know, with the disturbing Trump, in my opinion, xenophobic policies of ICE deportations, making everyone a priority for deportation if you're undocumented, we need some limits at the state level with our taxpayer dollars, with our state and local police, not only because it'll make communities more safe, but it's also something that will limit the fear that many immigrant communities are feeling right now.
But I mean, can we just be real? You do this for a living. You know how this works. Trump didn't write these laws. He didn't pass these laws. He's not a legislator. He's not a lawmaker. He's enforcing laws that are on the books that were passed with a lot of Democrats voting for them. So what he's saying is...
very disturbing executive orders. Executive orders prioritizing everyone for deportation.
The basic immigration law is clear to everyone who lives here, which is there's a process by which you get to come here, you get a green card, you get a visa of some kind, and if you don't have that, you're not allowed to be here. That's the law. It was passed by Congress. It's been that way for 240 years. Nothing to do with Trump. And so my question is, do lawmakers get to decide which legitimately passed laws they're going to try to subvert or not? Can you kind of see the problem here?
Well, I disagree, Tucker, because we're talking about state resources, local and police law enforcement, and yes, at the state level, we get to make decisions about what level of cooperation we have with federal policies, with federal actions like ICE agents. So that's the law line we're drawing. It's about federalism.
Because it's not about federalism. Here you had a state lawmaker encouraging people to violate the law and doing so explicitly on social media. How would you, and this is a sincere question, I'm not attacking you, how would you feel if the governor of Massachusetts decided that, you know, we don't have to pay federal income taxes because, you know, they're bad and they cost Massachusetts a lot of money? Would you be in favor of that? Should governors or state lawmakers be able to decide that? Or how about federal gun laws? How would you feel about that? If the governor said, I'm not enforcing federal gun laws, is that legitimate too?
Well, if you're talking about state income taxes, not at all, or any taxes, what I'm talking about is we have a federal immigration policy, which is broken. I mean, we need immigration reform by Republicans in Congress won't pass it. So at the state level, what is the best use of resources? And we've had police chief after police chief in Massachusetts talk about the fact that they would rather direct the resources towards violent criminals, whether those who are undocumented or whether those who are U.S. citizens.
I don't want to interrupt you, but you're not engaging my question at all. So let's say, again, I'm going to ask you the first question one more time to see if you will answer it. If you were to pass laws in the state of Massachusetts to make it a sanctuary state, and there was a sheriff somewhere who felt like subverting those laws, doing what you are doing to the feds, but to the state of Massachusetts, would you support his right to do that?
I wouldn't support that because under our bill, we would prohibit sheriffs from collaborating with ICE agents. So that's part of the bill. And again, it's important to talk about these families that are...
You're prohibited from encouraging people to break the law, but you're doing it anyway because you feel like it and you think you're righteous in doing it. But you don't want to let other people make the same moral decisions that you're making, exercise their freedom of conscience? Because why?
Except, Tucker, law officials the other day have to follow state laws, and what we're saying is, how is the best use of state resources? Is it the best use of taxpayer resources to target hardworking families in their communities, giving back, providing a benefit to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
Okay, well, speaking of
I don't
hardworking
think that's a good
families,
use of taxpayer dollars.
Okay, so you're from Acton. I know your state law. So you're from Acton, and
There's a reason Tucker makes $50 million a year, and this guy makes $100,000. Tucker makes $50 million because he's practically a genius, and he's right when he speaks. So if he's saying this guy's wrong, it's all you need to know is Tucker saying this guy's wrong for you to know he's wrong. Not even listening to his common sense that he says.
down in Worcester, which is pretty like a half an hour away. It's pretty close. There was a teacher's aide last month who was murdered. She was strangled in her apartment by a man that we now know last week is an illegal alien. Now, you spent a lot of time talking about how to protect these families, these vulnerable immigrants. How much time have you spent thinking about how to protect people like that woman and her family? What would you say to her family now that she's dead?
Yeah, well, first of all, Worcester is not too far away from my district. I feel horrible for the family, and it's important to remember in reading the facts about how they found Mr. Melendez is that it was local police, it was the district attorney with DNA evidence. ICE agents were not at all involved in catching this person. It was a case of old police work that was able to capture this person.
I get it, but he shouldn't have been here in the first place. I mean, as you know, it was illegal for him to be here. There's no dispute on that. He was an illegal alien. If he hadn't been here, he wouldn't have murdered this woman. So encouraging him to stay here, I'm not accusing you of complicity in her murder, but I'm just saying you can kind of see the connection here as a human being, can't you? Like, what would you say to her parents? Sorry?
I think where I disagree with you is that if we just have a broad brush against all undocumented immigrants, you're not really creating the trust that allows immigrant communities or anyone in the community from feeling comfortable to call the police if they see a crime in their neighborhood, in their community.
I've heard that talking point. So last question. Who should be deported? We got 11 million odd, maybe more, illegal aliens here in America. Do all of them have the moral right to stay here? Who should we deport now?
Well, we've had past administrations like the Reagan administration that did immigration reform that legalized undocumented immigrants.
Well, what do you think? I mean, should we deport
undocumented immigrants who have a violent criminal history?